Okay, before we actually get into the editing portion of this, I just wanted to point out some things really quickly. First thing is, I'm going to be doing this in Premiere Pro, and although you may be using another editor, if you watch this, you will most likely be able to apply what I'm doing in here to your particular editor. I'm not delving into all the really tough stuff, because in Premiere Pro, the editing of titles and things like that is a whole thing in itself. I could spend hours on that. Later on, I'm going to be doing a more simple course for video editors that will cover all of them. They will cover Premiere Pro, HitFilm, Vegas, DaVinci Resolve, Final Cut Pro, and a few others, so I can apply what you're learning to each of those video editors. Also, if you want to go really, really basic, I have a really basic free titles course over at Basic Filmmaker University on how you could do titles and things like that using whatever editor you have. Like, it's really basic. So let's get into this. Hopefully you'll follow along. Let me know if you were able to do these things and replicate them in your very own editor. I have my workspace set up the way I like it. You may be in something like editing. Your workspace may look like this. You may be doing graphics. It may look like this. I like my workspace like this, especially for the tutorials, because the only thing I'm dealing with in this tutorial is the tools over here, the timeline, the program window, which shows what we're editing, the sequences and media here, any effects we're going to be happening to use, and more importantly, these effects controls. Now, if you want to set your space up like this to match, go ahead. For instance, if I'm in this space, I can go through and I can say, yes, I want this project, but I want it up here. Yes, I want effects, and I want it up here. Projects, effects controls. There we go. I don't care about any of these. I'm closing all these panels, and I'm closing this media browser. I have my tools here. You'll notice they wrap like this. I set that like that. And then I have, of course, the essential graphics. And let's move this over here. We don't need all that space. And let's move this down here because we don't need all that space. Now I've pretty much set it up the same way I have for the BFM workspace. If you want to change your workspace like this to match mine, fine. If you want to just fumble around and use your existing workspace to go through this tutorial, well, that's fine too, however you want to do it. You'll notice my BFM workspace, it's a little different. I put my audio over here. I like seeing the audio here, which is connected to the timeline. I like having a long timeline. I like having my tools here, my program window here, project, my effects, my controls here, and my essential graphics, especially for this tutorial. All right, if you did pause the video and you have everything set up, or you just want to follow along the way you want, currently have it set up, well, that's cool too. You can always watch this video and you can always come back to it later and follow along step by step. Now, what we're going to cover in this video, let's do something here. Let's just create a sequence first. It doesn't matter what you use. I'm going to use, if you look under Sequence Presets, Digital SLR, that stands for single lens reflex, like a camera. I'm looking for a 1080 at 30 frames per second to show you what's going on. Just select that for right now. We'll call this Title Tut, just for the heck of it, and we'll click OK. And there's our sequence up here that it created. And then here's Title Tut. That's the sequence we're working on, and things will show up in here. Now, we want to pull one of these over to here, and so I want to create something other than a black background so you can see what's going on. Click on this little upload paper, this little paper flipped up thing, and go down and pick color matte. A color matte just acts like a video. It sets it to 1920 by 1080. We might as well set it to 30 frames per second, or whatever your frames per second is, because that's what we set our sequence up as. Forget that. Click OK. It's going to ask you what color you want it. We don't care, but let's just set it to white so you can see it. We'll call it color matte. And there's our color matte sitting up here. That's now an asset, which we're going to drag into the timeline. And we're just going to expand it like this. Now, if you come over here, let's click on here, and you hit the plus key. That would be over on the keyboard. It's usually to the left of the backspace key, to the right of the minus key, not the one on your keypad, but the one on your keyboard. It will zoom up, minus zooms down. So there we're zooming up.
I'm just going to put that in there because this is what we're going to work on. All right, so we have a color matte. It really doesn't do anything. I want to show you something other than white. Go over to Effects and type in GRAD. We're looking for gradient, and specifically we're looking for this 4-color gradient, just so we can change this to something and we have some sort of background. I could use a photo, I could use all sorts of stuff, but I want you to be able to follow along with me and be able to do the same thing. So we're going to grab this, we're going to drag it on to this color matte, and it's going to give us this rather, I don't know, some think pleasing, some think ugly color matte. It's a bit loud, so let's go over. We have our color matte selected, which means any of our controls in here, see, no effects controls. Effects controls. This is basically any media you have, you can control it. You can see our 4-color gradient here, which is an effect added. We could change all sorts of things in here. I don't care about that right now. And this is how you position things. Let's undo that. Vertically, let's undo that. Rotation, let's undo that. And all sorts of other stuff. We can also play with the opacity. What I want to do is I want to turn off the opacity. You notice when I start playing with opacity, it sets a keyframe. Let's undo that. Turn off the opacity, and let's just tone that down a little bit, like that. It's just like it's a picture, a piece of video. You can make it as long as you want. Okay, so now we're all set up. We're all cool. We have our color matte and we have our sequence. Now the point of this video, which is where I'm getting to, is let's drag in, if you have these motion graphics installed, let's drag in down here. We're just gonna drag it down here and we're gonna plop it right there. Now obviously it's too big because I created a 1920 by 1080. These are done in 4K. So if you did a 4K, you should be good. If you're in 1920 by 1080 like I did, right click, say set to frame size, boom. What that does is it just sets this thing to 50%. You could have it any scale, but that's what set frame size does, is it sets it to the frame size and it scales it. Okay, we got all this stuff in here. Let's do this. Let's drag this over here because we have quite a bit. And let's drag this over here. With the timeline here, we're going to hit the plus on the keyboard again. We're going to open this up so we can see what's going on here. All right, so these motion graphics are great. You can set the upper text, the middle text, the lower text. Unfortunately, some people with slow computers have a hard time with this thing. I just hit play. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Do you see that chunkiness? And you can hit the space bar again. And eventually, yeah, look at that. Try again. Try again. And eventually Premiere Pro figures out that you really want to play this in real time. Now when you render your videos out, it's not going to do that. It's going to render out just fine. All right, that's a ton of preamble to show you the following. If you want to create this type of title and do some animation, and you want to do it without all the fancy text and motion blur and stuff like that, you just want this thing to come in from here, show the text, have this yellow bar and everything else. You can create this within Premiere Pro, within Essential Graphics, and it will be very lightweight and it will play quite easily for you. I'm just going to go step by step because I don't know your skill level in Premiere Pro. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're coming over here and we're going to click on this type tool, and you'll notice when I have the type tool selected and I click, nothing happens. We're trying to add text to this. That's because this particular element, which is our essential graphic that we added, remember we can manipulate this thing as a single object. I'll undo that and that. It thinks this is selected. So deselect that, make sure your text tool is selected, and let's add some text. Mine's already set up, Montserrat, bold. You can use any font you want. I've set it to 60. Let's click in here and let's do title, line 1, title, line 2. You can go over here and click on this arrow and you'll notice I've already got this set up. Your text may end up being like this when you type it in. That's okay. Just come over here. Make sure this text element is selected. You'll see it appear over here. That's all your text stuff. And just scale the thing down until it looks about right. Something like that. Now I'm going to move it over here. I can try and move it over here. That's kind of a pain. Let's undo that. Click hold down shift, it'll constrain it. So we're going to move this thing over here. So we've kind of done our cool thing there. There's title line 1, title line 2. It looks like that. I actually think this thing may be more than a semi-bold. Let's use a bold. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's a bold. Okay, so we have title line 1, title line 2. Now remember, like the motion graphic, this is one element. If I do something with it, I can move it up and down, undo that. I can move it left and right, undo that. I can play with the opacity, undo that. So we have title line 1 and title line 2. Now what we're going to do is we're going to recreate subtitle line 1 and subtitle line 2. So let's do it this way. Go over here, let's copy this, and then let's paste it. Now, if we move this down, again, click and hold shift, we have 2 of them. There's 1, there's 2. Now we're just going to go in here, we're just going to say subtitle line 1, subtitle line 2. Click on the arrow key. Let's move this thing over here and let's scale it down to sort of match that. Kind of like that. Click on it while holding down the mouse, hold shift. Let's move this guy over here. We've just created a duplicate of this pretty much. Now what we want to do is we want to create these lines of text description. So we're going to do the same thing. Subtitle line here, right? Copy, paste, and now we have a third one here. Again, just click on it. You'll see it selected here. Click, hold down the mouse key, hold the shift key. Let's go down here. And let's say line 1 of text description, period. Click on the arrow. Let's move it over here and match it. It looks like the font here is more like maybe a semi-bold. And let's grab this little guy, try and make it the same. Yeah, kind of like that. Doesn't need to be perfect, but that's kind of like that. Okay, again, click and hold down the mouse, hold down the shift key. Let's move it to the left. Okay, now we have duplicated these lines of text. Let's double click on this text. Let's copy, Control C, and move to the end of this text. Hit return, Control V, paste. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You could keep going if you want. And then I'm just double clicking 2 space, 3 space, 4 space, 5 space. If I'm going too fast for you, pause the video. 6 space, 7 space, 8 space, 9 space. So there we go. We have line 1 of text description all the way through line 9 of text description. It isn't exactly perfect. That's okay. So now we have this one, remember, one element in here where we've created this title. It looks similar to that. Now we want to create this background area in this yellow thing. So over here, remember, this is our one element and it contains all these things. Over here, click on this little folded up paper thing and say you want to create a rectangle. Now it says shape 1 and it's at the top and you'll notice it covers up the text, right? So simply take shape 1 and drag it down to the bottom. Now it's behind the text. The other thing we want to do is we want it to be black. Click on the fill and hit it to black. Okay. And let's set it to the same. I think this opacity is normally 80%. Let's set that to 80% and hit return. And we basically created the same thing here, right? It kind of doesn't matter. We'll play with this later. But let's say it looks kind of like this. We'll grab this edge here. It doesn't matter how far to the right goes. And we'll put it down to here. And we'll put it up to here. And maybe we'll do it that way. We could drag it up here, certainly, way out of here. But I just, yeah, let's do that. Let's drag it way up here. You'll see what's going on in a minute. Now the thing I want to do is I want to create this yellow line. I'm going to grab this shape. In fact, I'm going to rename this shape. If I click on it, I'm going to rename it black BG for background. I'm going to copy this background shape. I'm going to paste this background shape. Let's call it yellow line. Hit return. Let's drag it on top of black background shape. And then let's go through and set that. All you have to do is the fill, is click this little dropper tool and just pick this yellow. Boom. Looky there. Now we're going to make sure our arrow is selected. And we're going to move this over to here like this. Maybe like that. Follow so far. Okay, now we've pretty much recreated this entire thing over here, and I'll show you why. We have a black background, a yellow, our top line, our next line, and our lines of text. Again, you could keep going with this. All right, so now notice how this guy comes on, chunking on me, and shows that. I'm going to hide this now because I don't need this anymore. Let's hide this guy. And here's this guy. Click on it. Again, all these elements are self-contained here. Click on this thing, and let's go to the effects controls, not the graphics, this motion right here. See this motion right here? This controls, as I showed you, it's one element, right? So here's what we're going to do is we're going to move this over like that. We can adjust it if we want to be perfectionists. There we go. So we basically have the same thing. So let's hide this or turn off this motion graphic. Now we basically have the same thing created there, which is more lightweight. When you play it, it's just going to appear on the screen. Let's make this longer. Doesn't care how long it is. We'll go to the beginning where it first appears. We're going to keyframe this. And if you don't understand keyframes say, like it's just going to sit here, right? Keyframe says the position X and Y, I want it to stay there for all this time. And then as I move through time, watch what happens when I move the new position here to the next keyframe. It creates a keyframe. So that's saying I want it to stay here through time at this position. Let's go over to here. Through time to this position. And then what I want you to do is I want you to move this thing through time. Doop. From here to here to the left, and it figures out how to do that. So here's what happens. Let's play it. Hits the keyframe. It starts moving to the left. That's how keyframes work. Let's go back to the first one. I don't know if you did that or not. And let's clear out the keyframes. And the way you do that is hit the position. It'll say, you're going to delete all these keyframes. Do you want to continue? Yes. So this is how we animate this thing on. We go to the very beginning of this. If you hold down your shift key, by the way, it will magnetically lock. If you have this magnet turned on, holding down your shift key, see the little arrow thing? Oh, there's one. Oh, there's one. It'll magnetically lock to the first. Also, if you're here, if you pressed shift up arrow, it'll go to the beginning. Shift down arrow to the beginning or the end. So I'm going to shift up our arrow here. Now, I know this from just using Premiere Pro a lot. If I hold the shift, you watch the timeline, shift right arrow, and I right arrow 1, that's 5 frames, that's 10 frames. So let's go up to effects and let's set a keyframe right there. Boom. Then what we're going to do is we're going to shift 1, 2 back, and we're going to animate this guy like that off the screen. So what'll happen? This guy will come plopping on the screen like that. And you'll notice it isn't chunking, it isn't having a hard time. In fact, I'm just going to remove this element now. And it comes on pretty fast. You don't get all the fancy motion graphics, you don't get all the fancy stuff and all that. If I don't like how far this came on, I can just keyframe back to, hit these little arrows. There's where it's off the screen. There's where it's on the screen, then it does nothing else. I'll just set, maybe I want that much. See how that comes on? Now here's the nice thing about that, is I can go through, as long as I have this guy selected, I can go through and I can click, double click, and I can change these lines. Hello, there. Subtitle line 1, let's call this is a line. And then let's go through here and say, this is something cool. Space, space. This is also cool. Space, space. I like this. I'm done. Click the arrow key. Let's play it. And there you go. You can still do the same thing as the other motion graphics. You can scale this guy down, make it smaller, maybe like that. Maybe you like something like that. Boom. And that's how you do that. Now, the thing about this is you can just remove this text, or you can create this line, or you can create this line. And let's say we like this look right here. Well, just like our other thing, where it comes on and off the screen, it's pretty simple where, like, for instance, I can go here, Hit a keyframe for that position, Shift 1, 2, and then animate it off the screen. Then it'll animate on. And then it animates off, animate on, animate off. So we can make this smaller. So what's happening over here? I'm going to hit the tilde key in this area. I'm going to show you. So here it's off the screen. It animates on at this position. It holds that position all the way down. Notice these numbers over here don't move. To here. Then watch the numbers over here as I move. It's going to shift to the right off there. Now we have this. Let's say this is too long. Actually, I want it to go off there. Again, we just grab these two keyframes. You just select these. You move them down here like this. Animates on. Animates off. Let's say I like that. I'm going to drag this down here. Let's say I like that. I like the way this card works. I need to turn this back on. I like this. I like the way that card works. And I want to use it somewhere else. Okay. Alt dupe this or copy and paste. I just alt drag and I get another copy. Come over here. On this one, I'm going to say, I like. Come over here and say, I want. And down here I say, it's cool. I know. Double click on here. Now we got this, but this is kind of cheesy the way this thing looks. It's not really great, has too much space. It's no problem. Click on I like, drag it down, click, drag down with the shift key, come down here, misspelled that, didn't I? Click, hold down the shift key, put it up here. Well, what about all this space up here? Not a problem. If I select this, I'm selecting the black background. If I select this one, I'm selecting yellow line. If I select both of them, like this, I have these little guys here that I can do like this. Now I can just change that. Now look what happened. I like, I want, it's cool. You could do this with anything. You could make this however you want. You can also, by the way, drag and select multiple objects like that. Notice up here how it does that? I'm dragging, selects that, selects yellow line, and maybe I want to move this up like this. So there we go. I like, I want, it's cool. And there we are. Hello there, this is a line, whatever. Let me show you another example. Let's say I alt drag to make a copy of this. And let's say I want to create one like the left-hand side over here. Now again, you're not getting all the motion blur and all the lines coming in, and I could certainly and will certainly go through a tutorial on how to do that in my Premiere Pro titling course. This isn't the place. This is already 30 minutes long. But let's say, just for an example, I want to have this thing come in over here and I want this yellow line on the right-hand side. So let's take this one. First thing we want to do is get rid of these keyframes. So let's click this little position thing. Bye-bye keyframes, you bet. Now we're going to move this thing all the way over here. Somewhere in there maybe. Let's click on our yellow guy. Let's again click and hold down the mouse. Shift drag to the left. Maybe we'll put this thing right here. I'll click on my box. Move this guy in over here. Cool. Now I'm going to take the whole thing. I'm going to move it over to the left where I want it. Hello there. Like that. Then we'll go back and do our thing. Shift up arrow to the beginning. Make a keyframe. Shift right arrow twice. Make a keyframe. Go back to the original keyframe. Let's animate it on. Let's go to the end. Let's hit another keyframe. Shift twice. Left arrow. Keyframe. Let's animate it off to the left. And really simply, there's our hello there. This is a line, blah, blah, blah. Goes off the screen. Here the one comes in the right. We just made two of these. Now you can scale these however you want. Make them gigantic. Remember, this is text. These are objects. It's not going to de-res on you very badly. You can make it the size of the screen and animate it around. You can play with all sorts of things. That's how you duplicate these and make some lightweight titling objects on here. It's pretty simple, and it's all about the animation. Again, you don't get all the fancy motion blurry things going on. You don't get all the text animating in here and everything else, which you can do. It's a bit of a pain, but that's not the purpose of this tutorial. This tutorial is the purpose of showing you how you can pretty easily create similar looking motion graphics in here that are lightweight, and they'll play and they don't bog your computer down. And if you're okay with that, well, hey, make your own. Copy mine or make your own. And that's pretty cool. So let's play with this thing. Is this the one? Nope, undo that. Let's get rid of the top one. I want to show you something else here. Let's say we don't like this. We can do the same thing. We go over and we select on this. Let's select on our yellow line. Let's use our little color picker and let's change this yellow bar to something else. Let's say change it to, hey, let's change it to this blue. There we go. We got a blue color. Let's go over and take this black background and let's change its fill to something else. I don't know. Let's change it to, ooh, isn't that awful? Let's also change it to this blue like that. And then let's run the opacity for this thing down quite a bit. Oh, look at there. And maybe I go in and maybe I'll take this line, this text here, and maybe I'll change that. This is a line. Let's change, let's just change it to black. Change it to black. We'll change, this is something cool also. Dark black so you can see it. Yeah, let's get a little boldier with that so you can see it. There we go. Now I've totally changed all that. We haven't affected the animations at all. Pretty cool. You can also click on these. You can move this up here. You can move this over here. You can move this down here like this if you like. You notice because we're animating here, this single object, everything's cool. We can move this here. We can stick this here. We can move this up here. Maybe we double click and remove all those lines. This is something cool. Click on my arrow. Let's say I like that. I'm going to go up and I'm going to just select the blue and the yellow, or what is it, ever it is now, blue and a blue. And let's just make this guy smaller like that. Animation's still in place. Comes in, does its thing, and away it goes. You can really get creative and you can really do some really cool things with this. I suggest if you're going to create these things from scratch, let's delete this. If you're going to create these things from scratch, go ahead and first click on the text, of course, and go here and do from S-C-R-A-T, from scratch. Click on here, make this up here. Let's make it real big. I suggest you create them as big as you can and scale them down later, because that way you can see what you're doing. Let's change this text to white, color picker here. And let's just go with a rectangle. Looks like it kept my blue rectangle. Notice it's in front of it. Let's pull it down. Let's change that to something like this gray. And we're going to come up here. We're going to do that, maybe like that. Right? And maybe here, that's creating a stroke. So maybe we add a stroke like that from scratch. Now let's go through and take this shape again. Let's copy it. Let's paste it. Click, shift, drag down, and maybe we'll put this thing right here like this. Make this guy kind of long like this from scratch. Let's copy this text. Let's paste this text. Let's make sure these shapes are down here. This shape is the bottom. We're going to call that bottom background. This is the top background. In fact, from scratch is the title. Let's move this guy down here. We'll move this guy at the top. We'll move the top background under that, just so we're consistent. Here's the second one. Here's the bottom background. Let's change this to, this is a tutorial to show you how to create titles that animate in Premiere M-I-E-R-E Pro. Neat. Click on the arrow tool and let's resize this, something like this, right? And let's click on this bottom box, format it up here, And well, just for fun, let's change this bottom box. Let's make it some other color that looks really neato. Like, yeah, let's do that. And then let's take on the top box. Let's change that to a gray. We'll just click, find me a gray. How about that? It's okay. So now we have our from scratch thing. Now we just take it and we can handle it like an entire object by itself. We can scale it. We can move it around. We can do that. That's kind of really an ugly blue. Go to the bottom background. Let me change this to a better blue. Something that isn't so icky doodles. Maybe like that. That's better. The gray and blue work better. And let me kind of mess with the gray a little bit there. There we go. I like that. So now we have our little card that we can use wherever we want. Let's move it down here. We're going to, first thing we're going to do is we're going to scale it and position it on the screen. Maybe I like that here. And then maybe I put this thing over here and it's going to pop in at the top left like that. So same thing, shift up arrow with this selected. I'm going to set a keyframe. This time I'm just going to do shift 1, which is 5 frames, set a keyframe, go back, animate it off. It says from scratch, and this is how I do this. From scratch. This is a tutorial to show you how to create titles that animate in Premiere Pro. Neat, eh? I read it. Set a keyframe, shift, right arrow once, animate it off. And that's how long our title is. And there you go. So let's say that's how I've designed my titles. Again, Alt, copy, duplicate. I'm going to come over here, and now I'm going to say my review. And let's click Shift, center that. This is my new review for a, new product, period. Click the arrow. Let's kind of put that in the middle. And let's move this blue box up here. Now we got this going on. From scratch, this is a tutorial to show you how to create titles that animate in Premiere Pro. Neat, huh? Off. My review. This is my new review for a new product. Let's animate it off. I'm going to hit the tilde key. I'm going to move these keyframes, select them, move them down here. My review. This is my new review for a new product. I actually would think this would be like that. Now you can do this, make these titles all over the place, however you want. And again, they're very lightweight. They're easy to create. And if you put in some, like if you had some design already in Photoshop or someplace else that you wanted to rip off some titles, just drag it into Premiere Pro here, stick it on here, and then go in here and just make it. You can do all sorts of things in here. Again, I don't want this particular thing to be so long that you're just dying. It's already like going to be 45 minutes long. I will cover all this stuff in my Premiere Pro titling course, as well as other editors. But for now, that gives you an idea on how to create it. The beginning of the video is most important. These are just too heavyweight for you and you want something more lightweight. It's easy to create any of these elements in here. We could create these titles the same. We could create these little triangle things the same. We can create these lower thirds the same. In fact, just to show you, I'm going to create this basic Filmmaker here. I know this is a long video, but I just want to make sure you get this and you get the skills. You may have to watch this a couple of times and follow along. So let's delete our little titles. Let's bring in our little lower third, right click, set the frame size. You'll notice I built it that big so it has room. And we're just going to create the same thing right here, somewhat without all the, look at that, ouch, 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 without all the stuff, without all the animations, without everything else. Let's make sure this is deselected. Let's click on our text. Let's over here, basic Filmmaker, click here. Let's get the general size of the text. It's probably, yeah, something like that. Then we're going to create another one over here. Let's copy and paste this. Click shift over to here. Let's change this to what it says. Filmmaker line, author line, educator. Click on my arrow, make this guy smaller. Click on this text. We're going to shift click on this text, and then you can just move them up. We'll create a rectangle. We don't want blue. Let's click here. Let's grab this yellow. We're going to move this over here. That needs to be behind here. Let's call that yellow. So we're going to put that right there. We're going to move that down to here. We're going to copy that. We're going to paste that. We're going to move it all the way down here. We're going to call this one black. We're just going to expand it over here. We're going to make this guy a little bit smaller there. Make this guy a little bit smaller there. And we're going to change this to black. And we're going to set the opacity down, let's say 80%. Oh yeah, let's change our basic Filmmaker text to black. Kind of looks cool with this outline, but let's take those off since we're trying to duplicate it. Let's take the stroke off of here. Let's go to our yellow and take the stroke off of there. We basically created the same thing here. I think this would actually look better if it were just a little bit like this. And we've just created our lower third. Let's get rid of this one, the heavyweight one. Now we got a lower third here. Now it's the same drill. Let's go over here and decide how big we want it. Now move it down here. Maybe we're going to have this thing coming over here like this. So we want it to come on the screen there. So again, go to the beginning, set a keyframe, 2 shift rights for me, go back and animate it off. Zoop. That looks good. I want it on for that long. And let's animate it off here. Click keyframe, shift right arrow, 2 clicks, off. And we just created a lower third. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, there you go. Again, I'm trying to keep this under an hour. It's about 50 minutes. So I'm going to cut off there. If you have any questions, let me know. I hope this was helpful. I hope this tutorial worked for you. For those of you that have less than optimum computers and you don't care about all the motion blur coming in and all the animations and stuff like that, although I will show you how to do that in the Premiere Pro titling course. If you just want something simple and easy to do, there you go. Okay, I hope that helps. Let me know if you need anything else, and we'll see you next time.